Want to go far in business and in life? You can't do it alone. The secret is expanding your network of personal relationships, building friendships, connecting on an intimate level, away from the office, over a coffee or cocktail. Welcome to All In with the real Nate Payo. The show that asks what happens when you go all in and leverage the power of your network of personal relationships.
Hello, welcome to the All In podcast with Nate Payo. I am your host, Nate Payo. Today I'm joined with an exciting guest, Hayden Humphrey. Hayden is a success coach, and he's here to talk about how you can get paid to be yourself and get 10 times the results by really looking at your own potential. So I always like to say, well, first, welcome to the show, Hayden. Sorry about that.
Thanks for having me. It's all good.
No worries. So Hayden is somebody that I connected with online, of all places. It seems to be a common theme right now with the coronavirus going on. But to me, something that I didn't really realize when I started kind of branching out and networking online outside of like my main industry is amazing people you can meet across the country and across the world very, very easily. And we connected in a Facebook group for podcasters, and the group's called Unconventional Leaders. It's not just about podcasting, but it's about leadership and taking a different take on things. And you just, hey, what's going on? Hey, what are you up to? And then like, let's get on a call. Let's do a little chit chat. And you find out you have some common interests and it's exciting. You're like, hey, why don't we do a podcast? So that's how for people listening at home, how Hayden and I came across each other. So welcome again to the show, Hayden. So tell me, how did you start getting involved networking online digitally, and where has that kind of led you?
Yeah, great question. So I think, honestly, it really started for me in college. I went to Ohio University in Ohio. It's kind of it's a big school. It's about 20,000 undergrad, but it's not necessarily the most like well-known university. And so when I was looking at organizations or companies that I wanted to intern for and wanted to work at after I graduated, there were a lot of companies that just didn't know the school or weren't coming to campus. And so when I looked at how do I get my foot in the door or how do I get connected to these organizations, it all came down to networking, and it all came down to who could I reach out to and start a conversation with that might be open to referring me or, providing me some different kind of opportunity into the organization versus just applying cold online. So I spent a lot of college reaching out to alumni, reaching out to people who had graduated or were affiliated with the university, just building relationships and building connections with them. As a way to get my foot in the door with these different companies. And it actually ended up working out perfectly. One of the people that I connected with worked at LinkedIn at the time. And I didn't end up going to work there immediately after college. But since I stayed in touch with her and since I had met her and reached out to her when I was in school, when the time was right, I ended up leaving and joining LinkedIn as part of a rotational program for them. So it was like an immediate payoff there. And I think what I've realized, even more broadly is the power of community and the power of building relationships with people and being really intentional and proactive about it. It's funny because, you talk about the cliche of like your network or your network is your net worth or whatever the quote is.
Yep,
but
that's the one.
So it's so accurate. It's so true. Because what tends to happen is when you're surrounded by people who are on the same or a higher level than you end up getting connected to opportunities that you would never have known about previously. And so that's really what I've tried to do since I graduated while working full time. And especially now that I work for myself and run my own business, it's how can I be really intentional and strategic about the people that I'm surrounding myself with, the types of relationships that I'm building with people, how I maintain those relationships with people. One of those ways is through Facebook groups like Unconventional Leaders, where you and I got connected originally. And part of the reason I love groups like that is it brings together people around a common purpose. And it tends to be people of the same caliber. So if you're really trying to break into like that next echelon, so to speak, of entrepreneurs or business owners or creatives or whatever it might be, that can be a really great way to get your foot in the door, is to join those communities, start to contribute and add value. And then over time, start to reach out to individual members because you have something in common. You're both involved in the group. You both love whatever the group's all about. And it's a much easier way to start a conversation. So for me, it's been something that I've done since college, and I just see the immense return on investment every single time I get connected to somebody new. And so it's something that I really just want to continue to focus on and continue to build.
So a quick question. When did you graduate college?
I graduated college in 2015.
Okay. So that to me is pretty cool because you're just getting started in your career, essentially. Mm-hmm. Like you're just, you're out to chase down the world and sow your seeds and conquer everything. And I've been around a little bit longer. I'm in my 40s, and so I'm like in the middle of my career. And then the cool thing about the unconventional leaders is there's people in all walks of life, from just getting started to people that are been doing this for a million years, and then there's people that are reinventing themselves in their later stages of their career. But what I wanted to talk and get your take on was, when I was just graduating college, I didn't think of networking as like very useful. Like, to me, it was like, oh, that's something you would probably go and hand out business cards. And probably when I was in college, I probably didn't even think of it that way. I probably was just like, I didn't even know what networking was. So I didn't focus on it. And I've noticed a lot of people, when they first get started in their career, they're very focused on, I have my personal life and I have my business life. And they don't really, they don't put the effort into developing business friendships. They just go, okay, work's 9 to 5. I go home, I hang out with my college buddies. On the weekends, I hang out with my college friends, or I go hang out with my family, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but they're not developing their business friendships very well. And so then, like, as they rise in their careers, people that you're friends with in college, their life gets in the way. They get married, they start having kids, and like your interests start diverging. And then these people that you thought like would be your friends for the rest of your life, you're not seeing them nearly as often. But the people you are seeing are these people that you started your career with, and you may be at the same company and you may have bounced companies, but you're all kind of growing at the same time. And then all of a sudden you hit your mid 30s, 40s, and you've been in the industry for a while, and you're like, hey, these are the people that I started with in my career, and now they're all senior level people at their companies, and I'm in a more senior level too. And so these are the people you reach out and you're connected with. You start realizing, like, hey, I got a lot of power in these people that I've known for a lot of years of my life. And then you go, man, I really wish I would have spent more time building those relationships sooner, because I would have had more, I'd have more resources. And people think, oh, what good is having a whole bunch of connections or a whole bunch of people in your network? Like, you can't really, how many people can you really be friends with? But to me, the network isn't necessarily this people that you're all fake and hokey with, and you're constantly trying to schmooze. Your network is a toolbox. And if you're hired to do something, whether it's your own business, it's your own company, you're working for somebody else, people hire you because of the work that you can get done. And as you grow in your career, the work you get done becomes less and less of what you can individually produce, and more about what you can get a team assembled around you to produce. And so if you have a bigger toolbox, a bigger group of resources to reach out to get things solved, or connect other people to a problem that can be solved, like, you're more and more valuable. And so having this big network of people is not just necessarily like, oh, these are all my close friends that I reach out to, but these are people that, hey, they know me personally, I know them personally, that we have a good relationship. They're going to pick up the phone if I call them, and I'm going to introduce them to good people when I feel it's right, and they're going to reciprocate it back. So what's your take on people in your age group that are just getting out of college, that their take on networking? Do you think that that's an accurate assessment, that most people aren't focusing on it?
Well, I think it's interesting, right? Because you have what I would consider to be the human condition, and then you have the general state of the age group that I'm involved in, which is millennials. And I think, to your point around networking and the importance of it long term, I think more often than not, people are focused on the short term. I think it's just like the human condition. People are focused on the short term. And so unless people have a very direct what for or a why in why they would go out and build those relationships and build those networks, it just doesn't make sense. If you didn't see the value in building a strong, interconnected, large group of people that, like you said, you could call and pick up the phone and they would introduce you to people and all that kind of stuff, it's like, well, why would I do that? And so it requires a certain long-term vision or a certain approach to goal setting and thinking about your life that is more long-term than anything else. I think from like the millennial perspective, it's interesting as I look at my generation and the generation that came before us. I see so much of this like push to achieve and push to do things. And, you think about how school has shifted and how the dynamics of even getting a career have shifted. And, you're talking to people who have internships in high school. They have internships their freshman year, their freshman summer after their freshman year. And then every subsequent summer they have an internship because they're trying to make themselves as well-rounded and as attractive as possible to future employers. And I talk to people like my parents, I talk to people in older generations, and it wasn't like that. Like you would go to college and then you would graduate and you would kind of figure out, what you wanted to do. But I feel like the whole dynamic of it has shifted where from a very early age, it's looking at how do I make myself as attractive as possible in the job market. And I think that requires a certain affinity for and commitment to networking. And so I think with millennials and even the generations that are younger than us, there is this sort of impetus to go out and network and build relationships and build connections from, a lot of different organizations, college institutions, educational institutions are sort of like pushing the importance of networking. So I think that group maybe might be a bit more aware of it and understanding of the importance of it. But to my original point, I think the human condition is unless you have a long-term why for doing something, you're just not going to do it.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear that people are taking a proactive approach at an earlier stage in their careers, because you're right. It's one of those things that it does take time to develop, and you don't really always see the value of it until it's down the road. I think, at least for me, when I started my career, it was very much like what I could individually produce was like what were people impressed by. But as you get older and you get more senior, then your responsibilities change, and it's what you can produce as a team, and you can't always do things yourself. You have to delegate. You need more people helping, and you need to facilitate this team. So that's pretty cool. Now, you are not at LinkedIn any longer. So tell me, what made you decide that you wanted to quit what I think many would say is a dream job working for a really hot tech company, and go out on your own, and you don't probably, I'm not exaggerating here, but you don't know what the heck you're doing, and you're just going to go figure it out and cast all cares aside and chase your dreams. So tell me what kind of got in your mind to make you want to do that, and how has that worked out for you?
Yeah, so you're not wrong. I didn't know what the heck I was doing at the time. But to give you some context and background, so, I went to a 4-year business college. I graduated, I moved to San Francisco to work at a late stage technology company. And then I joined LinkedIn as part of a rotational program. So up until I left LinkedIn, my life had been a series of me making the right quote unquote choices, doing the right things. I'm doing this because it seems like this is the most impressive thing that I can do. And I feel like it's going to set me up in the best possible way for whatever that thing long-term is that I actually want to achieve. And so me deciding to leave was really triggered by an experience that I had in the beginning of 2017 where I missed my sales quota. And it sounds kind of dramatic, but at the time it almost felt like this world-ending experience. Like, this is the one thing that I got hired to do. I what does this say about me that I'm not going to be able to, hit my quota, and et cetera, et cetera. And what I started to realize after the month was over and I was reflecting and digesting was that, I realized that my attachment to this totally arbitrary number was due to the fact that I derived a lot of sense of self-worth and identity from what I was achieving professionally, like my resume and where I was working and how many people knew me and how impressive people thought I was. Like that was the way that I affirmed my own sense of value as a person. And so anytime that came under fire, like me missing a sales quota, I automatically started questioning my own value and worth as a person, which is not the way that I want to live my life. Like not the thing, that I want to create for myself. And so when I started to take a look at, is this actually the thing for me? Is this the role for me? Is this the place where I want to be? I just started to realize that it wasn't. I am very lucky in that I grew up with a family of small business owners and entrepreneurs. So, at some point it was in the back of my head, I'd love to go start my own thing. But in going through a very corporate focused 4-year education and then working in corporate organizations, it just didn't seem like a thing that I could do immediately. It felt like I had to go in and quote unquote put in my time before I could go do the thing that I actually wanted to do. And I just started to realize the ridiculousness of that whole story and that, that whole train of thought. And when I came to all these realizations, I basically decided I don't want to be doing this. I want to be doing my own thing. I want to have a lot more freedom and flexibility and autonomy in the stuff that I'm up to. I don't want to have to be performing in my job. Like I just want to be able to show up and be authentically myself. And that's kind of where this whole mantra of getting paid to be you came from. Because when I left, I remember I texted one of my really good friends and I was like, I don't know if this seems, outlandish or like a pipe dream, but I really just want to get paid to be me. Like I want to create a life and an experience where I just get to show up fully authentically as myself every day. And I get compensated because of that authenticity. And so in the beginning, I didn't really know what I was doing. I left, I hadn't made a single dollar from anything entrepreneurial before I left, but I decided that was the right time. And I trusted that I would be able to figure it out over time. And so, happy to talk more about what that transition was like, but really it was more of a leap of faith and then giving myself the time and the space and the support too. Like I hired a coach at the same time to be able to best set myself up to take advantage of it and build an organization and build a company, which is, what I have been doing for the last 2.5 years. And I mean, it's been an incredible journey, thus far, and there's still a lot to be learned. But yeah, I think really the big things from that story were just me realizing it wasn't what I wanted to be doing. I took massive action to do something differently, and then I got supported in the transition between those two things.
I think that's a really cool thing that you're that self-aware of what was bringing you happiness with a career and what wasn't, and being able to do a big shift like that. Like for me, like as I've moved through my career, it was always like, what's the next thing? What's the next goal? What's the next dollar value I'm going to make? What's the next job opportunity? What's the next project I'm going to be on? And you think when you get to that next, like that one in your head, like if I get to this level, then I've got it made. I'm set. Like I'm going to be on cruise control. And then you get there and you go, oh, I just checked the box and there's somebody else doing a little bit better than me. There's somebody else that's making more money. There's some kid coming up the career path and they're going faster than I was up my career path. Like you're like, oh man, it's just this thing where you're just constantly looking for the next thing, and the achievements you make don't bring you this fulfillment that you're like really making a difference in life. But for me, it started changing when I started realizing, for me, the power of networking isn't the relationship between me and you or me and somebody else. To me, the power of networking is when I have people in my network that I can connect to other people in my network or somebody else's network through introductions and watch them achieve their goals and their dreams and move up that path. That's where I started feeling like, hey, that really drives me a lot of sense of fulfillment when I've made an introduction to somebody that could get in and do a sales call at some big company that they had been trying to get in front of, and I was able to help kind of facilitate getting them in the door, or get somebody plugged into an advisor that they didn't really necessarily know. Then I started going, hey, this is really what brings me happiness. Like, how could I impact more people's lives? And then when I started chasing like those as goals, I felt like my sense of purpose was a bit more defined. I was happier with what I was working on. And I wasn't always like, if I don't get to that next level, like I'm getting fast enough, then I would get frustrated. And then if I got to it, I was just like, okay, what's next? I mean, so that's pretty cool that you're self-aware to not get yourself kind of tangled up into that rat race.
Yeah, thanks, man. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a process over time. And, I still fall into this like results. It's about creating, it's about achieving, whatever it is. And, the thing that I'm so grateful for out of anything else, right? Because in the beginning of a business, it's difficult. Like I've had days where I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this? Why don't I just go get a job? But like even on the worst days, there's still this sense of like fulfillment and freedom and understanding that really what I'm doing is I'm more so creating a business, and I'm creating a sense of work and career that just allows me to show up and play as much as possible. Mm-hmm. It's how do I design a business that supports my lifestyle versus me having to fit into some other box or work on somebody else's boundaries or somebody else's schedule. And that's the thing that gets me so excited, is because there's so much freedom and joy and opportunity and abundance. And there's just so much to be had in that. And it's a totally different conversation than most people are used to having, because most people have the conversation of like, well, what job are you going to get? And how are you going to prepare yourself for that? And like, yeah, it's probably going to suck and you're not going to get the things that you want. And I'm just so uninterested in that conversation. Mm-hmm. It's available to everybody. Like this kind of experience is available to everyone. It's you have to decide that you're worthy of it and that you want to create it and start to take steps towards it. But that's what gets me really fired up in talking to people is how do you create a job or a business that's a direct reflection and expression of who you are.
Well, it's kind of funny because when I looking at your LinkedIn page and it says "get paid to be you," and you're like, that sounds kind of exciting. Like that sounds easy. That sounds like a lot of fun. But in reality, to figure out who you are is hard because like as soon as you start looking into yourself, like that's when, if you want to get paid to be you, like you have to do the hard things you don't want to do. Like, so if you're naturally like, hey, I don't want to be, I don't want to share a bunch of stuff on myself on the internet, or I don't want to like be authentic to people about like certain things, like you're going to hold yourself back from truly being up to your potential. And when you start having that decision, like, I'm going to do this, and it feels really, really uncomfortable. I know that feeling. You're like, man, what am I doing this for? Like, it'd be easier just to go phone it in and not worry about it, and just come home and turn off the switch and not have to think about like if I was on today or not today. But I think there's something to be said of just that uncomfortableness of discovering who you are. Really leads you to find your real potential, allows you to lean into it and grow.
Yeah, I just recently created what I call the Paid to Be Me framework. And it's the acronym is ACT or ACT. And the first letter stands for authenticity, like actually understanding who am I? What do I want in terms of a vision? Not just what do I think I should want, but what do I innately desire to create for myself? And part of that is also understanding who you are at the core. That's the hardest work that you're ever going to do, is the internal work, because it requires you to take a look at all of the things that you've been avoiding, and it requires you to be vulnerable, and it requires you to open up and have conversations with people about things that are incredibly, incredibly uncomfortable. And so it's not for everybody, but at the same time, I'm a stand that everyone go through that process, because really, this isn't about the business that you're going to build. It's not about the career that you're going to create. It's about the life that you want to have. It's about who you want to be as a person. And when I think about my life, when I think about the things that I want to create, what's important to me is living my life as fully expressed as possible, as much of the time. And I know that it's easier to do that when I'm doing the internal work and when I'm practicing authenticity and when I'm taking a look at my insecurities. And at the same time, it's some of the hardest stuff that I've really ever had to do. But I think this whole idea of like getting paid to be you and creating a lifestyle business and really creating the life experience that you want, first and foremost, you're spot on, starts with that authenticity piece.
Mm-hmm. I love this idea of like visioning how you want to live your life and setting up your career goals around that, because there's a Tony Robbins book and I forget the name of it, but something to do with money. And he's talking about like people that want to live like a billionaire. And he's like, it's not, you don't have to make it nearly as much money as you think you do to want these things. So like, let's say if you say, well, I want a private jet, like, private jet, $5-6 million. Like that's, how much money do I got to make to own a private jet? And he's like, you don't have to buy a private jet. Like you can charter a jet for like, $10,000, $15,000. It's not cheap by any means, but it's a lot less than $5 or $6 million. So when you start kind of identifying the life you want to live, and you start kind of gearing it around. So like if you said, hey, I want to have a real nice house on the beach. So I need to get this high paying job so I can afford, a mansion, in Malibu. Well, if you kind of like are creative about it and you could still, and it's an experience you crave, you say, okay, I could create something and I could live in like Costa Rica on the beach for a third of the cost. And I could create this business that's online that I don't have to be entrapped. Like you start kind of thinking of like all these ways and like how you can create this lifestyle. You're building a lifestyle that you want to live. Then you can start putting yourself in positions that are more likely to have that outcome happen, instead of getting out a job you're not happy with to earn a paycheck that's may or may not be able to afford those things you're chasing. Like, hey, how could I change my lifestyle to afford the things I want to do? How could I make the money I do need to live this lifestyle? And what are some creative ways of doing it? And so to me, the vision is more important than the goal, because if goals just become tasks and check marks and they might not bring you that fulfillment. But when you imagine the vision of how you want to live your life and you start chasing those things that put you in that position, then you're going to start feeling the fulfillment.
It's so spot on. I love that so much. And it's fun to talk about because it's sort of a counterintuitive conversation. Because when you think about the things that people want, like, hey, I want to make X amount of money. I want this particular title. I want to be able to live here or have this kind of house or whatever it is. Like they're looking for a certain experience of life. Like they're looking for a certain experience of themselves, a certain set of emotions that they get to feel on a day-to-day basis. Like there's a way that you get to feel on the other side, or that they think that they'll get to feel that's on the other side of making a certain amount of money or living in a certain place. But it's in this style of visioning and goal setting, it's about starting with the experience first, and then looking at what's the most effective path to get me from where I am to that end experience. And likely, if the experience that you're looking to create is outside of the norm or is a direct reflection of who you are as an authentic individual, it's going to require you to do things that you have never seen done before or don't know anyone who has actually accomplished the same things or gone down the same path. So, in this framework that I was talking about, this ACT framework, the T is for trust, because you have to be able to trust that in you going out and taking action towards this thing, you'll be able to figure out how to get there, versus if you just wait and say, well, I'm going to look and see if it's possible first, or I'm going to wait for somebody else to do it before I can do it, or I don't know how to do it. You're going to stay there forever. Because you creating a unique experience of life that's a direct reflection of you is going to require you to do things that you've never seen done before. And you have to trust that it's going to work out in the end.
Yeah, that's so true. Like if you want to do something, you kind of have to trust yourself that the process is going to take you that destination, and trust that it might not go as planned, but in general, you're going to kind of go in the direction you want to go, and that you're going to figure out along the way. And I think a lot of people, especially me in the past, is I would give up too soon. Like I would think, hey, it's not working. And here would be like a perfect example. Like you're the young go-getter, you're out there, you're creating this business, you're 2.5 years in, and I'm just kind of like starting this podcast process of my life, and I'm getting to this part where it's like, hey, maybe this is a little bit too much work, and it's not really getting the leads that I'm looking for. It's not really getting the following. I'm kind of feel like I'm wasting my time, and I've only been doing it for 6 months, and it's just kind of not worth it. So I'm going to give up on it and just kind of put it aside. And then 5 years from now, like you're going to pop up on my LinkedIn feed, and you're going to be doing something like super cool. And I'll be like, holy crap, that kid just like shot to the moon. He's like, you know, the next Gary Vaynerchuk. And then I'm going to be like, why didn't I stick with it? Like, I might not have had their same level of success, but I should have stuck with it because I would have had something. And now I have nothing because I gave up too soon. So I think there's some truth to that trust of trust the process, and also trust yourself that you need to put in some time to let it develop on itself. It's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to go necessarily as quick as you want at first. But if you consistently show up every day, you're going to exceed your expectations of where you thought you would be in 5 years.
Totally. This is like such a perfect conversation. So the C in ACT is for commitment, which is exactly what you're speaking to. Like creating something unique and different is all about how willing are you to choose commitment in the face of whatever circumstances present themselves. It's this question of like, how far are you willing to go? How long are you willing to hang on in order to see this commitment that you have come to life instead of getting taken out by circumstances, which happens to so many of us all the time. And it's totally normal and natural that you get to a point where you'd be like, I don't see the upside, or I'm not seeing the leads, or I'm tired, or I don't have enough time, or whatever it might be. But when we choose in service of our commitments versus our circumstances, it leads us down a path to generating what we want, versus getting sidetracked by things that are normally totally outside of our control. And so, so much of it is just like, how willing are you to choose in service of your commitments over and over and over again?
It's funny. We didn't even plan to, like, I didn't know you had the ACT acronym and go through it. It just kind of rolled through it. So tell me a little bit, who are the types of people that you work with? Who are the kinds of people that you would say, hey, if you're thinking about hiring a coach or getting a coach to help you with life, like who are the people that should be thinking about it, and why are they picking you?
Totally. Well, one, I think everybody should work with a coach because it's just been such an incredible experience for me personally. Like in working with my coach, it's been so transformative. So regardless of whether or not I'm, the right coach or we would be a fit, like go talk to somebody about getting supported. It's just one of the best investments that you can make in yourself. For me, the types of folks that I usually work with and just really get fired up about supporting are people who are in the position where I was, 2.5, 3 years ago. So they're people who are super high achievers. They tend to be people pleasers. So everyone loves them. And at the same time, they have a hard time setting boundaries, saying no to people, actually like fully authentically expressing their emotions. They went to a great college. They did really well in school. They got a great job at a great company, like professional services, technology, consulting. And they're a few years into this job and they're like, this sucks. This is not at all the thing that I was expecting. I feel really like almost claustrophobic. I feel lethargic. I don't like the work that I'm doing. I look around and I don't really want to be like any of the people, around me. And there's this sense of wanting to do something different. There's this sense of feeling like I'm wasting my time and potential here, and I would rather be putting it towards something that's unique to me and allows me more freedom and flexibility and autonomy. And maybe you've thought about entrepreneurship before. Maybe you've thought about starting a business before, and it's been this like, well, when's the right time to do it? And like, do I have enough experience to do it? Et cetera, et cetera. And really just realizing like, now's the time. Like there's never a wrong time. There's never a right time. It's never going to be perfect. And it's really just simply a question of what's the life that you want to start living right now? Because you could give it another 3 years, but it means that those are 3 years that could have been spent building your business and putting you in a place where you have a lot more freedom and flexibility and autonomy, and you're getting paid, to be you. So those are typically the folks that I'm working with, like later 20s, early 30s, more corporate positions that feel like they're really stuck and unfulfilled, and they want to be doing something that's more unique. It's just more about like, how do I get started with that? Where do I go for support? Like being able to find somebody who can support and guide them through that experience.
Yeah. So I think coaching for anything, whatever your passion may be, whether it's business or you want to get in shape fitness wise, or it's a hobby you want to do, is you want to have a coach, which I think is a little bit different than a mentor. A mentor is somebody that you kind of rely on for advice and support, but a coach is, to me, is different. Like there's kind of two things a coach does. One, if you're complete, you have no experience whatsoever with things, they do show you the fundamentals. They're going to show you the movements you need to take, the places you need to go, and the stuff like that. But they're not there to do the work for you. They're there to guide you through the process. And then if you say, well, I already know how to create a website, I already know how to do marketing, I already know how to do these things. Like, you say, well, why would I need a coach? Because the coach isn't there, again, to tell you how to do things and give you the one life hack that you forgot, that you didn't know to get there. They're there to reach inside of you and take what's already in you and bring it out to the front. The best coaches are going to reach inside of you and pull it out. And they're the ones when you say, like, well, I don't know what my expertise is. I don't know what my voice is. Like, I don't, like, why would anybody listen to me? They're the ones that are going to help you or yourself discover, like, these are the questions I need to ask myself. And then that vision of who you could be starts to kind of form, and your voice starts to form, and you start realizing, like, hey, I do have a unique set of gifts. Like, nobody else has the exact same path through life that I did. And nobody has the exact same take on things. Even if we're talking about, like, the same message, like between me and you, we have a different background that we were brought up through. And there may be similarities and there's differences. But if I say one thing to somebody, it might not resonate with them because they don't relate to me, but they might relate to you. And you could say the exact same thing. Yep. And all of a sudden it's like, that's the magic that happened that kind of set me down this path. So I think that's where the coach really comes in. It becomes critical to have in your life, is they're going to help you discover who you are and be the best version. So if you're just looking to get better at your career, you don't have to be starting your own business. You just want to, like, get in better shape. They're the person that holds you accountable and gets you to do the things that you probably are avoiding because you don't want to do the hard work.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny because it's interesting in coaching. We say that nobody needs a coach, but if you want to play in the Super Bowl, you have to have a coach.
Yep.
You have to. And I don't care who you are as a human, you will get in your own way and there will be times that you get taken out. And so it's really just a question of, like, how much support do you want to have? How often do you want to be reminded of the greatness that's already within you? And how willing are you to be held accountable to the commitments that you've made? You can totally do it by yourself. And from what I found is I was taking baby steps by myself comparatively to, since I started working with a coach.
Yeah, I know that feeling. You're like, yeah, I'm making some progress. I'm doing some good things. Or they're like, hey, you're barely scratching the surface. Do this instead. You're like, oh, I'm not ready for that. But then you go do it and you're like, that wasn't so bad. Like, what was I playing small? So very cool. So anybody that's listening, they want to find you. They want to, find out if you're a right fit for a coach, or they want to send somebody your way. Where can they find you?
Yeah, best place is my website. So it's just www.haydenhumphrey.com.
Okay, cool. That'll be in the show notes for anybody who's listening. So please go check out Hayden. He's also a bunch of places on social media. Follow him, support him, and just, he's got a great message, tons of enthusiasm, and I think you're going to be going places, and you're one to watch. So
thanks,
I appreciate you coming on the show and being a guest here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, thank you.
Make sure to visit our website, therealnatepeo.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, so you'll never miss an episode of All In. While you're at it, if you found value, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if simply tell 2 friends about the show. Looking to connect? You can find Nate Peo on LinkedIn or Instagram.